You people think hospitals mean special treatment. Lying here doesn't make you important.
An entitled woman poured boiling water on my injured wife in her hospital bed, thinking I was completely powerless to stop her. She had absolutely no idea I'm a Navy SEAL who has taken down international terrorist networks. The biggest mistake of her life. I systematically destroyed her entire existence, and she never saw it coming. Before we dive into this jaw-dropping story, drop a comment below telling me where you're watching from. And please, hit that like button and subscribe for more incredible true stories that'll leave you speechless. Merry Christmas to all of you. This season is about protecting family, standing up for justice, and making sure good triumphs over evil, which is exactly what this story delivers. The fluorescent lights in St. Mary's Hospital hummed steadily overhead as I sat in that unbearably uncomfortable plastic chair beside my wife's bed. Sarah lay there looking so fragile, her face pale as snow against the white pillow, an IV drip connected to her arm feeding her body what it desperately needed. She'd been in a catastrophic car accident just 3 days earlier. The doctors assured me she would recover eventually, but she needed complete and total rest. Her ribs were severely bruised. She had a mild concussion that worried me constantly. Every single movement caused her excruciating pain that broke my heart to witness. I held her hand as gently as humanly possible, watching her sleep, and trying not to think about how close I'd come to losing her forever. My name is Marcus Reed, and I'm a Navy SEAL. I've faced down terrorists in the unforgiving mountains of Afghanistan. I've survived impossible missions in hostile territories that would shatter most men's minds. I've seen horrors that haunt my dreams. But nothing, absolutely nothing, prepared me for the soul-crushing helplessness of watching my wife suffer in a hospital bed, unable to take away her pain. Sarah and I had been married for 6 beautiful years. We met at a small coffee shop near the naval base where I was stationed at the time. She was a kindergarten teacher with the kindest, purest heart I'd ever encountered in my life. She spent her days teaching small children to read, to share, and to be compassionate human beings. She volunteered at animal shelters every single weekend. She was the light that guided me home from every dangerous mission. Now she lay here broken and vulnerable because some drunk driver had run a red light and slammed into her car at full speed. The doctors said she was incredibly lucky to be alive. 3 broken ribs, a serious concussion, severe internal bruising, and whiplash that would take months to fully heal. What happens next is going to absolutely shock you. A woman is about to walk into this hospital room and commit an act so vicious, so unthinkable, that it changes everything. Stay with me, it gets intense fast. That's when I heard the commotion erupting outside in the hallway. I need this bed. My daughter is sick. A shrill, piercing voice echoed down the corridor, shattering the peaceful quiet of the recovery ward. I stood up immediately, every one of my military instincts kicking into high gear. I moved toward the door, silently, years of stealth training making my footsteps soundless as a ghost. Through the small window in the door, I could see a woman in her 50s, with bleached blonde hair, styled in an obviously expensive cut. Too much makeup caked her face like a mask. She wore designer clothes that probably cost more than most people earn in a month, and she carried a handbag with a logo I recognized as being worth several $1,000s. Her face was twisted in an expression of pure, unbridled entitlement and rage. "Ma'am, please lower your voice," a young nurse said with remarkable patience, though I could see the stress written all over her face. "This is a recovery ward. We have other excellent rooms available on different floors. This patient is in critical recovery and absolutely cannot be moved under any circumstances." "I don't care about other rooms," the woman screamed, her voice getting even louder and more aggressive. "I don't care about other floors. This room has the best view of the gardens, the most space, and the nicest furniture. My daughter deserves the absolute best. She deserves this room. Move that woman out now." My jaw tightened dangerously. That woman was demanding to be moved like a piece of unwanted furniture. That was Sarah, my wife, the woman who had nearly died just 3 days ago. The nurse remained remarkably professional, despite the verbal assault. I understand you want the best for your daughter, ma'am, but that's simply not possible. The patient in that room suffered serious injuries in a car accident. The doctors have specifically ordered that she not be moved. Her condition is still extremely delicate. Do you know who I am? The entitled woman interrupted, her voice dripping with contempt and superiority. I'm Karen Westfield. My husband is Gerald Westfield. He's on the hospital board of directors. He donated an entire wing to this hospital. I can have you fired with one phone call. I can destroy your pathetic little career. Now get that woman out of my daughter's room. The nurse's face went pale, but she stood her ground courageously. Mrs. Westfield, I understand your position, but I have to follow medical protocols. The patient's doctor would need to approve any move, and I can absolutely assure you that won't happen. Then get me the doctor. Get me the hospital administrator. Get me someone who understands how things actually work around here. I'd seen enough. I opened the door and stepped out into the hallway. Is there a problem here? Karen turned to face me, her cold eyes scanning me up and down with obvious sneering disdain. I was wearing simple jeans and a plain black t-shirt. Nothing fancy. To her, I probably looked like nobody important, nobody who mattered. Yes, there's a problem, she snapped at me like I was an annoying insect. Your wife needs to move out of that room immediately. My daughter needs it more. She's sick and deserves the best care, which means the best room in this entire hospital. I kept my voice calm and level, though every combat instinct the first possessed was screaming at me to neutralize this threat immediately. Years of military discipline helped me maintain iron control. My wife is recovering from a serious accident. She has 3 broken ribs, a concussion, and severe internal bruising. The doctors have made it crystal clear that she absolutely cannot be moved. It could cause life-threatening complications. I don't care what the doctors say. Karen's voice rose even higher, echoing off the hospital walls like a siren. Other patients' family members were starting to peek out of rooms, drawn by the shocking commotion. My Brittany has the flu. She has a fever. She's suffering terribly. She needs peace and quiet, and the best room in this hospital. Your wife can recover anywhere. She doesn't need special treatment. Behind Karen, I noticed a teenage girl sitting in a wheelchair, looking deeply embarrassed and uncomfortable. She had to be Brittany. The girl looked tired and had a red nose, but she definitely didn't look seriously ill. She certainly didn't look like she needed to be in the critical recovery ward. This entitled woman is about to do something so horrific, so unbelievably cruel, that you won't believe it actually happened. And when she does, everything changes. Keep watching. Justice is coming, and it's going to be devastating. Ma'am, that's not going to happen, I said, my voice dropping to a tone I usually reserved for hostile combat situations. Quiet, controlled, but carrying an unmistakable edge of authority that made hardened criminals surrender. My wife stays exactly where she is. Find another room for your daughter. How could you speak to me like that? Do you even know who you're talking to? My husband will certainly hear about this. He has influence at this hospital, Karen replied, visibly upset. Mom, please, let's just go, Brittany pleaded, her face burning with embarrassment. I don't even want this room. The other room is perfectly fine. But Karen was beyond listening to reason or her own daughter. She'd worked herself into an absolute fury, and nothing was going to stop her rampage now. We'll see about that, Karen screamed. She stormed past me, actually shoving me aside with surprising force, and pushed the door open to Sarah's room with a violent bang. I moved quickly, but not quickly enough to stop what happened next. The door slamming open startled Sarah awake from her peaceful sleep. She'd been resting, finally, getting some relief after days of agony and trauma. Now her eyes flew open, filled with confusion and terror. She tried to sit up instinctively, reacting to the sudden noise and intrusion. Marcus, what's happening? Her voice was weak and scared. Who is that woman? Karen didn't answer her. She didn't explain. She didn't even pause for 1 second to think about what she was doing. On the side table next to Sarah's bed sat a thermal pitcher of hot water, nearly boiling. temperature that the nurses had left there so Sarah could make tea when she felt up to it. Karen grabbed that pitcher with both hands. Time seemed to slow down to a crawl. I saw exactly what was about to happen and lunged forward desperately, but I was still 3 critical steps away. Without a moment's hesitation, without a shred of remorse or humanity, Karen lifted that pitcher high and poured the scalding hot water directly onto Sarah's chest and stomach. Sarah's scream of pure agony cut through me like a serrated knife through my heart. It was a sound of absolute suffering, raw, terrible, inhuman. She thrashed in the bed, her hands desperately trying to push the burning water away, her hospital gown soaking through instantly with the boiling liquid. I was across that room in less than a second, grabbing Karen and physically throwing her away from my wife with all my strength. She stumbled backward, dropping the pitcher, which shattered on the floor in an explosion of glass and scalding water. "You insane woman." I shouted something I never do. My training emphasizes total control, but in that moment, seeing my wife in absolute agony, I completely lost it. "What have you done?" Sarah was crying, sobbing, her whole body convulsing with shock and pain. Steam was rising from her soaked hospital gown. I could see her skin already turning bright, angry red through the wet fabric. The burns were immediate, severe, and devastating. "Nurse, doctor, help." I yelled at the absolute top of my lungs, while carefully trying to help Sarah without touching her burned skin and making everything worse. The medical team rushed in within seconds. They moved with practiced efficiency, carefully removing Sarah's wet hospital gown, assessing the horrific burns, and calling for specialized supplies. "We need burn gel immediately. Get me saline solution. Call for the burn specialist now." The doctor's orders came rapid fire. Sarah was still crying, whimpering in unbearable pain. "It hurts, Marcus. It hurts so much. Please, make it stop." "I know, baby. I know. They're helping you. Just hold on for me." Karen stood in the corner of the room, completely unbothered by the chaos she'd created. Her arms were crossed, and she actually looked annoyed rather than horrified by what she'd just done. "Maybe now she moved to a different room so my daughter can have this one," Karen said, her voice cold and matter-of-fact, as she'd just done something perfectly reasonable. I stared at her in absolute disbelief. This woman had just intentionally caused serious physical harm to my injured wife, and she felt completely justified. She showed zero remorse, zero empathy, zero recognition that she'd done something monstrously evil. Hospital security arrived. Karen screamed as they escorted her out. "You can't treat me like this. I'm important. I have connections. You'll all pay for this." The burn specialist examined Sarah with a grave expression. "These are second-degree burns, covering approximately 15% of her chest and abdomen. The pain is going to be severe. She'll need to stay completely still for the healing process." "How long?" I asked, my voice tight with barely controlled rage. "At least 2 additional weeks, possibly more. And Mr. Reed, I need to be honest with you, these burns will scar. We'll do everything possible to minimize that, but some scarring is inevitable." Over the next hours, they worked on Sarah, treating the burns, starting antibiotics, and adjusting her pain medication. I stood there watching helplessly as my wife suffered because of one cruel, entitled woman's actions. A police officer is about to tell me something that makes my blood boil. This woman is going to walk free because of her money and connections. That's when I make a decision that changes everything. What happens next is absolutely epic. A police officer arrived to take my statement. After I explained everything, I asked the question that mattered most. "Will charges be filed?" The officer shifted uncomfortably. "That's up to the district attorney. We'll submit our report, but ... double quotes." He paused. "Mr. Westfield is a very influential man in this city. He has connections with the mayor's office, the police commissioner, and several judges. I'm not saying justice won't be served, but these cases can get complicated when wealthy people are involved." I understood perfectly what he wasn't saying directly. Karen would buy her way out of consequences. Again, after he left. I sat beside Sarah's bed, holding her hand gently as she slept fitfully. My phone buzzed. It was my team leader, Jake. "Marcus, I heard what happened. Is Sarah okay?" "She will be eventually." I filled him in on everything. "That's absolutely messed up, brother. What can I do to help?" I was quiet for a moment, thinking carefully. Then I made my decision. "Jake, I need information on someone. Karen Westfield and her husband, Gerald Westfield. Everything you can possibly find. I mean everything." There was a meaningful pause on the line. Jake understood exactly what I was asking. "Marcus, are you sure?" "You know, once you start down that road, I'm absolutely sure. This woman hurt Sarah deliberately, and she's going to walk away because of her money and connections. That's completely unacceptable." "All right, brother. Give me a few hours. I'll send you everything." True to his word, Jake called me back 3 hours later. "Marcus, you're not going to believe what I found on these people. They're far worse than we thought." What I read made my blood boil even hotter than before. Karen wasn't just entitled, she was a serial abuser of anyone she perceived as beneath her. Jake had found dozens of documented incidents over 15 years. Waiters fired over nothing. A sales clerk was hospitalized with a broken nose. A neighbor's family was forced to sell their house. A housekeeper falsely reported to immigration and was deported. Dozens more victims who couldn't fight back. Each time, her husband's money and connections made the problems disappear. Each time, Karen faced zero consequences. Gerald himself had built his fortune through bribery, fraud, substandard construction, exploiting workers, and intimidation. The file included emails, text messages, financial records, and recorded conversations proving everything. I sat in that hospital corridor, reading through everything, and made my final decision. These people had hurt too many innocents for too long. They'd caused suffering without consequence because they believed their money made them untouchable. But money can't protect you from everything, and I'm a Navy SEAL. We're trained to take down threats that others can't handle. We find weaknesses. We plan meticulously. We execute flawlessly. Karen Westfield had made the worst mistake of her life when she hurt Sarah. She had absolutely no idea who she was dealing with. 2 days later, I got confirmation of what I'd suspected. The district attorney declined to press charges against Karen, despite clear security footage and multiple witnesses. The real reason: Gerald Westfield had made a massive donation to the DA's re-election campaign. Karen was going to walk away with zero legal consequences. That's when I put my devastating plan into action. Karen valued her position in high society above almost everything. She was president of the prestigious Lakewood Country Club, a position she'd fought viciously to obtain. She loved lording her status over other wealthy women. That would be the first thing to fall. I created an untraceable anonymous email account. Then I compiled everything Jake had found about Karen, every incident of abuse, every person she'd hurt, every act of cruelty. I included the security footage showing her deliberately pouring hot water on an injured woman. I sent this comprehensive package to every member of the Lakewood Country Club Board of Directors with a simple message: is this the kind of person who should represent your club? Within 24 hours, I sent similar packages to all 200 wealthy families at the club. I also sent it to every local news station, with an anonymous tip about a wealthy woman's history of violence being covered up by her husband's money. The response was immediate and absolutely devastating. The news stations ran major stories. Local socialites' dark history revealed. The coverage included interviews with Karen's victims: the waiter who lost everything, the sales clerk with the broken nose, and the family who lost their home. The country club board called an emergency meeting. The vote was unanimous: Karen had to resign immediately or face expulsion. Karen's response was predictable. She posted long, rambling rants on social media about being persecuted, about cancel culture, and about jealous people trying to destroy her. This only made everything catastrophically worse. More victims came forward with their own experiences. The housekeeper had been deported. the dog walker she'd attacked, a former nanny with stories of daily abuse. Within 1 week, Karen Westfield went from respected country club president to a complete social pariah. Invitations were rescinded. Former friends stopped answering her calls. She lost her positions on various charity boards. Her perfect social world crumbled to absolute nothing. But I was just getting started. Karen's life is falling apart, but her husband is about to face something even worse. Federal agents are coming, and what they find is going to send him to prison for decades. This is where true justice begins. While Karen's social standing collapsed spectacularly, I turned my full attention to Gerald. First, I sent evidence of his affair with his secretary Jessica to Karen anonymously, of course. Photos of them at hotels, romantic text messages, and expensive gifts on credit cards. Karen, already publicly humiliated and emotionally fragile, absolutely erupted. She confronted Gerald at his office, screaming in front of all his employees, throwing things, causing such a scene that security had to physically escort her out. She hired the most aggressive divorce attorney in the city that same day. But the divorce was just the beginning of Gerald's nightmare. Next, I sent all the evidence of Gerald's corruption, the bribes, the substandard construction, the labor violations, the financial fraud to multiple agencies simultaneously, the FBI's Public Corruption Unit, the State Attorney General's office, the Department of Labor, the IRS, the City Building Department, every major news outlet in the state. Federal investigators don't care about local connections or political donations. They follow evidence wherever it leads, no matter who gets hurt. Within 2 weeks, FBI agents raided Gerald's offices in a massive operation. They seized computers, files, financial records, everything. The news coverage was absolutely massive. Local developer under federal investigation for corruption and fraud. Within 1 month, Gerald Westfield was arrested on multiple federal charges: bribery, wire fraud, tax evasion, racketeering, conspiracy, and endangering public safety. His bail was set at $5 million. His assets were frozen. His projects were shut down. His business partners abandoned him instantly. The perfect life Gerald had built through corruption was utterly destroyed. 3 months after Karen had burned Sarah, everything had fallen perfectly into place. Gerald was facing decades in federal prison. His trial date was set, and the evidence against him was absolutely overwhelming. Karen and Gerald's mansion had been seized. Their luxury cars were gone. Their bank accounts were frozen. Karen had moved into a small, run-down apartment in a terrible neighborhood, the kind she used to mock and look down upon. The divorce was brutal. Because of Karen's public reputation and evidence of her own cruelty, she was getting almost nothing. One evening, I decided it was time for Karen to know the truth. I drove to her new apartment, building a far cry from her former mansion. Peeling paint, broken landscaping, bars on the windows. I knocked on her door. When she answered, she didn't recognize me at first. She looked absolutely terrible. Her expensive hair treatments had grown out, showing gray roots. She wore no makeup. Her clothes were cheap and ill-fitting. Karen Westfield, who wants to know? Her voice was hollow, defeated. My name is Marcus Reed. You poured boiling water on my wife in the hospital 3 months ago. Her face went deathly pale. Recognition and terror flashed in her eyes. I'm not here to hurt you, I said calmly. I'm here to make sure you understand something important. What do you want? I want you to know that I'm the reason your entire life fell apart. Every single bit of it. Your reputation is destroyed. Your friends are gone. Your divorce. Your husband's arrest. His business was ruined. That was all me. She stared at me in complete shock. You? How? That's not too can't. I'm a Navy SEAL, Karen. I've taken down terrorist networks operating in multiple countries. You are incredibly easy. You and Gerald left a trail of evidence and victims a mile wide. All I had to do was make sure the right people saw it. Tears started running down her face, not tears of remorse, I noticed, tears of pure self-pity. You've destroyed my entire life, she whispered, her voice breaking. No, I corrected her firmly. You destroyed your own life by being a cruel, abusive person for years. You hurt innocent people over and over because you thought your money made you untouchable. You thought you could do whatever you wanted without consequences. I handed her a folder filled with copies of all the complaints against her, all the documented incidents, all the people she'd damaged. These are the people whose lives you destroyed, Karen. The waiter got fired. The sales clerk you hospitalized. The family you forced from their home. The housekeeper you got deported. My wife, who you deliberately burned because you wanted a hospital room with a better view. She was sobbing now, clutching the folder with shaking hands. This is what it feels like to be on the other side, Karen. This is what it feels like when someone more powerful than you decides to hurt you, and you can't do anything about it. This is what your victims felt. What are you going to do to me? She asked, terrified. Nothing more, I said. You've lost everything. You're living in a cheap apartment, in a dangerous neighborhood. Your social circle is gone. Your husband is going to prison. Your money is gone. You're alone and powerless. I stood up straight. This is your life now, Karen. This is justice. You get to live every day knowing that your cruelty finally caught up with you. I turned to leave, then paused at the door. If you ever come near my wife again, or hurt any other innocent person, what I've done so far will seem like mercy. Do you understand me? She nodded frantically, unable to speak through her tears. I left her there, sitting on the floor of her cheap apartment, surrounded by the complete ruins of her life. 6 months later, life had returned to normal and beautiful. Sarah was completely healed, both physically and emotionally. She was back to teaching full-time, loved by her students and colleagues. Gerald Westfield was convicted on all charges and sentenced to 25 years in federal prison. Karen got a job at a call center, making minimum wage, experiencing for the first time what it meant to actually work for a living. The people she'd hurt over the years finally saw justice served. One evening, Sarah and I sat on our porch, watching the sunset together. Marcus, she said softly, I never asked you this properly. What exactly did you do to make all that happen to Karen and Gerald? I smiled slightly. I just made sure the truth came out. I gathered evidence of their crimes and corruption, and I made sure the right people saw it. That's all. You just shared information. Sometimes that's all it takes. Bad people often destroy themselves. They just need someone to shine a light on what they've been doing in the dark. Sarah squeezed my hand. You know what I realized? Karen thought you were weak and helpless that day in the hospital. She had no idea who you really were. No, she didn't. She learned that the hard way. We sat in comfortable silence, our lives peaceful again. Thank you for being my protector, Sarah said. Thank you for making sure that woman could never hurt anyone else again. I kissed her forehead. I'll always protect you. That's a promise I made when I married you, and it's a promise I'll keep until my last breath. That was justice. That was what Karen deserved. And that's exactly what she got.